At the beginning of 2002, a frightening mystery began unfolding in Oregon City, Oregon. Two schoolgirls disappeared while walking to their bus stop only a few months apart from one another. These two girls had much more in common than just vanishing, though. For starters, both girls lived in the same apartment complex, they both attended the same school, and they both disappeared while walking to the exact same bus stop. Were their disappearances related as well? That was the question on many people's minds. No one saw anything suspicious and no one heard anything out of the ordinary on the days that the girls went missing. Searching the road that led from their apartments to the bus stop, there was no evidence of a struggle in either girl's case. They were just gone. Little did anyone know, these two friends were closer than anyone realized. This is a case that centers around a neighborhood parent in which many of the local kids considered his home a fun place to hang out. The man's daughter was about the same age as the girls that disappeared, and they had been frequent visitors inside his home. No one knew the deviant thoughts going on in this neighborhood dad's mind until thoughts no longer satisfied him. When those thoughts turned into action, it caused an entire community to fear for their children. On January 9th, 2002, 12-year-old Ashley Pond was running late getting to her bus stop. It was around 8 a.m. and Ashley's mom, Lori, urged her to get going so she wouldn't miss the bus. Lori told her that she loved her, and she watched as Ashley sprinted out the door, not knowing that it would be the last time that she would ever see her daughter alive. The bus was less than 10 minutes from the apartment, and it was a route that she walked every day. Ashley had been excited to attend dance practice that was being held after school, so Lori did not expect her home until about 6:15 p.m. But when she didn't come home by then, Lori became concerned. When she called the school, she learned that Ashley had not attended class or the dance practice that day at all. In a panic, Lori called the police to report Ashley missing. Police initially suspected that Ashley had run away, but Lori was adamant that her daughter would never have done so. None of her personal belongings were missing, and she definitely would have taken some of them if she had run away. After conducting numerous interviews with friends, family, and neighbors, it didn't take the police long to come to the conclusion that Ashley had been abducted. Detectives learned that Ashley never got on the school bus that morning. It appeared that whoever took her had done so in a matter of minutes. The road that she would have walked that morning was thoroughly searched, as was the nearby wooded area, but nothing was found that would lead them to Ashley. For a time, Ashley's father was considered a possible suspect, as he had served prison time in the past for sexually abusing her. Ashley's mother and her boyfriend were being watched closely as well. Detectives even kept tabs on several of the male neighbors from the apartments, but no connection could be found between them and Ashley. Over the following weeks, police chased hundreds of leads, but most of them led them nowhere. Many were searching for Ashley, and she made the TV news and the papers every day. Here's an interview given by a friend of Ashley's. The girl in this interview is 13-year-old Miranda Gaddis. Sadly, she too would vanish only a few weeks after this interview was taken.
It's really hard to believe that happened to one of your friends or something. It's just really different and really sad.
Almost exactly 2 months to the day that Ashley disappeared, Miranda Gaddis disappears in the same exact manner that Ashley had. Miranda left her home to go to school around 8 a.m. March 8th, 2002. She walked the same route Ashley had, walking up the hill from the apartment complex to catch the school bus. Miranda's older sister called her mother around 1:20 that afternoon, letting her know that Miranda was not at school. Michelle, Miranda's mother, called the school to confirm this information, and she was informed that Miranda was indeed absent. She also learned that Miranda had never gotten on the school bus that morning either. Panic washed over her, and she immediately called the police. From the very start, it was evident that there was a strong connection between Miranda's disappearance and Ashley's. They have two girls who know one another, they are friends, and they attend the same school, they live in the same apartments, and they both disappear from the same exact location at or around the same time in the morning, 8 weeks apart. The FBI started a task force bringing on many other detectives and specialists, and they set up a command center in the city's fire station. They investigated nearby sexual offenders and discovered that there were several hundreds of them registered within a few hours' drive of the girls' apartment complex. They profiled every one of the residents in the apartments and anyone who had visited in the time frame of the girls going missing. Investigators questioned many, just as they had in Ashley's case, and one of the people's names that came up was a man named Ward Weaver. He had been briefly questioned after Ashley went missing, but was only considered a possible witness at the time. He lived only a short walk away from the apartments that the girls lived in, and interestingly enough, he lived right next to the bus stop that both of the girls vanished while walking to. Ward Weaver was a neighborhood parent who had a 12-year-old daughter that was in the same dance class as Ashley and Miranda. Investigators learned that Ward's house was a local hangout for many of the kids in the neighborhood. Both Ashley and Miranda had been in his home many times. Ashley even lived in Ward's house for several months the year before due to having some issues at home. Through many interviews, Ward Weaver came across as a friendly, normal, hardworking father. When a rumor began circulating that the neighborhood dad was behind the girls going missing, he became the focal point of the media. Even though reporters hounded him daily, he appeared to be enjoying the attention just a bit too much. He would answer their questions, he would give them house tours, and he often spoke about what he thought happened to the girls. One reporter said that he came across as just a normal guy, but the more that the reporter spoke with him, the more nervous Ward seemed to get. Ward confided in this reporter that he was in fact the FBI's #1 suspect, while also insisting on his innocence. This statement was very concerning because at the time, the FBI hadn't even publicly named him as such. Ward told another reporter that he had flunked 2 polygraph tests. It was around the same time that another rumor began making the rounds. This rumor claimed that the girls' bodies were buried somewhere on Ward's property. What sparked this rumor? Ward dug a large hole in his yard, then covered it in concrete, claiming that it was to be a foundation for him to put in a jacuzzi. This action by Ward really set the rumor mill alight. Residents were even leaving signs in Ward's yard, asking the FBI to, quote, dig me up. Though the FBI didn't have probable cause to search and dig on his property, they had already begun to dig into his past, and they were surprised at what they uncovered. Ward had a criminal record from many years before that included physically assaulting various women. One victim stated that Ward would seem like his normal self, and then suddenly, out of the blue, he would become a whole different person and attack her without provocation. Even Ward's ex-wife claimed that he hit her on the head with a cast iron skillet several times while she was sleeping. They even discovered that Ward's own father was on death row for murdering a young couple back in 1982. His father murdered the boyfriend, and then he kidnapped, sexually assaulted, and then strangled the woman to death. Afterwards, he buried the woman's body in his backyard, where she stayed for over a year before he was caught. A report was made that Ward had been accused of raping Ashley Pond the year before, in 2001. Even though a police report was filed, no charges were ever brought against him. I found an interview where a teacher claimed that she had spoken with Ashley about what Ward did to her. According to this teacher, Ashley told her that Ward had never raped her, he only attempted to. This undoubtedly left the two on bad terms, and Ashley no longer visited his home after that. Could this have been a potential motive? The FBI wanted to learn more about Ward's alleged inappropriate sexual behavior with Ashley. What they discovered was pretty disturbing. A teacher at Ashley's school remembered on one particular occasion watching Ward drop Ashley off, but before she exited his vehicle, she saw him passionately kiss her goodbye. A family friend of Ashley stated that she would spend weeks at a time at Ward's house, and when she was there, she often slept in his bed. 2 weeks before Miranda disappeared, she had been at Ward's house for his daughter's 13th birthday party. At this party, Ward became upset at Miranda because she had told another girl at the party that she should not spend the night there because Ward had molested Ashley, and that if she did, Ward might molest her too. An ex-girlfriend of Ward's stated that he was very angry with Miranda because he had found out that she had been telling girls in the neighborhood to, quote, stay away from his house. Ward continued to entertain any reporter who knocked on his door. He claimed that the hole he dug in his yard was for a hot tub that he planned to put in. He jokingly remarked, I'm putting in a jacuzzi. Last time I checked, that wasn't against the law. Most of the accounts that the FBI were hearing were based on hearsay. It still did not give them the green light to search his property. That would all change August 13th, 2002, when Ward's stepson Francis called 911 stating that Ward had just raped his 19-year-old girlfriend. The girlfriend gave a chilling account of what happened that day. She thought she knew Ward pretty well, and she thought that he was someone that she could trust. She continued, Ward offered her a ride home, which was also his home at the time, as she was living with him and his son. During the car ride there, he behaved quite normally. Nothing seemed off about him. But as soon as they walked into an empty house, that's when she saw a side of him that she had never seen before. In an instant, he threw her to the floor and began tearing her clothes off. He drug her into his daughter's bedroom and then proceeded to rape her. The girlfriend said, he looked possessed, like it wasn't him when he was doing those things. Satan was inside of him. Then, after he had his way with her, he got off of her and stood up, and that's when his face went back to normal. At that moment, she saw her chance to get away. Still naked, she kicked him back away from her and ran out of the house. She grabbed the tarp in Ward's backyard that covered the concrete slab and used it to cover herself up. She ran down the street and flagged down a passing car and was taken to the hospital. Within a few hours, Ward Weaver was arrested and put in jail. Forensic evidence was taken from the home that had to do with the rape case, but nothing further was searched. For over a week after his arrest, a full-scale search of the property still had not been conducted. Angry residents protested outside of his property daily, urging the FBI to act. It wasn't until 10 days later, on August 23rd, that they finally secured a search warrant. Large crowds gathered and watched with anticipation, spellbound by the process. Dozens of agents and lots of equipment were brought in to essentially flip that place upside down. It was only a few hours into their search that a discovery was made. In his shed behind his house, they found a box that contained human remains. Those remains would later be positively identified as Miranda Gaddis. The next day, they would find Ashley Pond's remains inside of a 55-gallon barrel. This barrel was found beneath that newly poured concrete slab. In September of 2004, Ward Weaver was charged with 17 counts, ranging from rape, sexual abuse, abuse of a corpse, and the first-degree murders of Ashley and Miranda. He was given 2 life sentences without parole. In 2009, Miranda Gaddis' younger sister Mariah visited Ward Weaver in prison on 2 separate occasions. She said, I had to know what happened. It was the only way that I could put it behind me. During those visits, Ward admitted to sexually assaulting Miranda before he killed her. Ward stated that the reasons for the murders were as follows. He said he killed Ashley because he feared that he was going to be charged with raping her. With her gone, she would not be there to testify against him. He said that he felt no remorse for killing Ashley. In fact, he said that she deserved it. Ward Weaver broke down in tears when talking to Mariah over Miranda. He said that he felt a lot of regret over it, but that he had to because he thought that she saw him in the process of moving Ashley's body that morning when she was walking to her bus stop. He said that he called out to Miranda, telling her that Ashley was back and that she was inside his house. Miranda, obviously concerned for her friend, went in to check on her, not knowing that she was walking into his sadistic, murderous trap. He strangled both of them to death with his bare hands. He also told Mariah that he had planned to kill her next if he had not been caught. I briefly touched on Ward Weaver's father's death sentence in the story. Just wanted to add a few more details. Ward Weaver's father was Ward Weaver Jr. He came across the young couple that he would later murder on the road as their car had broken down. Ward Weaver Jr. was also a suspected serial killer. There were 24 unsolved murder cases that he was suspected suspected to be involved in. Due to the fact that he's already on death row, the prosecution most likely doesn't need to try him for those murders, due to probable lack of evidence, and the fact that he's going to get what's coming to him either way. Ward Weaver's grandfather was Ward Weaver Sr. He allegedly raped his own daughter and then went on to molest two of his granddaughters later on. In February of 2014, Ward Weaver's stepson Francis was arrested and charged with murder. He and three others had allegedly robbed and killed a drug dealer. Francis Weaver was sentenced in 2016 to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. He threw his life away for providing the gun that was used in that killing. Ward Weaver's house was demolished, and all that remains is an empty piece of land. Okay, so this is the end of the case, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing to my channel. Please let me know in the comments section your thoughts on this video. I would love to know them. If there's a specific case that you want me to cover, please let me know. I love to take requests. Currently, I have 2 requests that I am working on, and I'm trying to get them done as quick as I can. This actual case was a request by another YouTuber for me to cover it, so thank you so much. Anyhow, thank you again for watching, and remember, stay safe out there, people.